This week, we began an Encore Special Farm Week report about a precious balancing act in the Mississippi Delta. This report is born out of a collaborative research project years in the making and ultimately looks at how a relatively simple change in ag practices could reap huge benefits to farmers, wildlife, and the environment.
Historically, there have been times when farms and conservation have been at odds.
As humans, we have almost doubled the amount of nitrogen available to the globe.
When it rains, just by the nature of there being more fertilizer on the landscape, the rain can transport that to aquatic systems.
If I can keep my soil in Sunflower County and not send it down to New Orleans, everybody's happier.
Hello, I'm Mike Russell. Welcome to this Farm Week special report. Land in the Mississippi Delta is known for its fertile soil, supplying the nation with food and other agricultural resources. Modern farming practices have graded and fertilized land to precision, creating a perfect mix of soil conditions for growing. But when these soil nutrients escape the land on which they were placed, they can wreak havoc with the environment. In 2018, more than 115,000 metric tons of nitrates flowed down the Mississippi River into the Gulf of Mexico. There they threatened a diverse ecosystem far removed from the flatlands of the Central Delta.
My grandmother's people were some of the first settlers in this area, and really before it was Indianola, I think they called it Sunflower. It was just a small family farm, and it, at that point, was a lot of cows and some row crop. Over the years, my father and the farm labor did a lot of the clearing of the land. He did kind of the original landforming job on a lot of the fields so that he could irrigate. That's been kind of one of the biggest changes, is getting everything land leveled and then precision land leveled. All of this land is precision land leveled.
Hello, I'm Jimmy Sandifer from Belzoni, Mississippi, and we farm here corn and soybeans. We have operations for wildlife and conservation. We've been farming all our lives, so that's what we've been doing.
It's a low margin business in the best of times, and when the markets are really low or the weather is really bad, it's a no margin business.
I can say it's not easy in these times. These times are so hard, but it's always been like that. You know, my great uncle farmed, my dad farmed, and I mean, I've heard about these times, so that's why you always try to be prepared. So your your unit sits down on the road.
There's not a producer out there who's not really focused on managing soil, managing water, and all of those elements combined to produce a crop every year. What's important to consider is that a production system and the management thereof is really different for every producer, and that's different based on the resources that are available to them, whether that's financial resources and capital investment, time, equipment, labor, things that all are integral to the production system, and a lot of times those are limiting. right now for a producer who also needs to be an engineer and a broker and really innovative in so many ways. Making a profit can be tricky, and input costs are really high.
Agricultural profitability can often be a game of inches. Every square foot matters to farmers trying to make a living. But it's a balancing act. Every acre of Delta land in production is an acre that's not available for conservation and wildlife. But what if there was a way to maintain fields for ag use while providing valuable wetlands and reducing erosion through the non-growing season? Dr. Jason Hoeksema and a team of state and federal researchers are looking into how one simple change might make a world of difference.
Mississippi Delta farmers and farms are really important for efforts to feed the world. Not only our part of the world, but the corn and soybeans and other products that come from the Mississippi Delta feed big parts of our country and other parts of the world. The way that agriculture has been practiced traditionally in the Mississippi Delta, there are some potential downstream consequences of it that we should be concerned about.
Well, the only way to ensure maximum yields on a farm is to fertilize. There's quite a bit of nitrogen put on the landscape globally to maintain the yields needed to feed a growing global population.
When it rains, just by the nature of there being more fertilizer on the landscape, the rain can transport that to aquatic systems. And I think one of the main concerns there is the development of algal blooms.
And that has been shown to contribute to the dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico, which has consequences not only for wildlife and ecosystems, but for people as well.
Being a farmer, it's always been about balance because nature's in charge a lot, and runoff and the wildlife, it works together. It's always worked together for me.
I mean, you've got to take care of your place. You've got to take care of your land. I mean, it's just like your fertility. You've got to spend money to put into it so that it will be productive. Stewardship is primarily about self-preservation, but the offshoot of that is it's also good for the broader world and the broader environment. If I can keep my soil in Sunflower County and not send it down to New Orleans, everybody's happier.
But oftentimes conversations about agriculture production and conservation can be in conflict with each other. And the reality is that what's happening on the landscape is an integrated system. And so it's putting these pieces together. So we look at the landscape a little bit differently, the role of soil function beyond crop production, as well as the other ecosystem services it can provide.
Everybody's concerned with, water quality and soil quality. And that's what makes a farm. Without that, we're not, if we don't take care of it, we're not going to be able to keep growing these crops.
Keeping fertilizers and other nutrients on the land where they are placed is key to reducing river runoff downstream. Dr. Hoeksema's project along the Sunflower River encourages farmers to temporarily flood their fields at the end of the growing season. These temporary wetlands serve as a barrier to runoff, retaining the soil during the rainy off-season while also promoting beneficial microbial activity. The project is a way to understand just how beneficial these wetlands may be for both the land and for the birds that use the Delta as a stopover on their long trek south for the winter.
Literally millions of migratory birds pass through the Mississippi Delta every year. The Delta is potentially a really valuable stopover site for a lot of those birds to refuel. So the Sunflower River Project, its goal is to explore basically what happens when we create temporary wetlands on crop fields. So we work with farmers to find a way to put water back out onto the crop fields after the crop harvest in the fall, to do that in a way that doesn't interfere too much with farm operations, but also in a way that may help migratory water birds.
This is our second year in the project, and they're really doing some studies for how the flooding that we're doing for the shorebirds is, interconnected with crop yields.
The reason we focused on the Sunflower River Basin is because there's been a lot of work in that region to develop infrastructure on farms called tailwater recovery systems, which is a series of leveling of fields and berms and ditches that allow the farmers to capture water that runs off those fields, pump it into an on-site reservoir, and reuse it. We were already grappling with the problem of how to get farmers interested in potentially, making this habitat for birds. The fact that it could have additional benefits, not only for the environment, but even for farms and farmers, it hadn't dawned on me, and it was very exciting because it made it seem like this could really happen on a larger scale.
A unique project, to say the least.